So it turns out that the Brexiteers were absolutely right. We have absolutely lost our sovereignty. We have lost control of our own country, and we now no longer make the decisions for the UK. The issue is, of course, that this has come because of this Brexit debacle, not in spite of the European Union. Nothing illustrates this better than the recent forced resignation of Sir Kim Dara. It was very obvious that Boris Johnson forced Sir Kim to resign, and he did that because Donald Trump had a pissy fit because he is the most thin-skinned, whiny little man-child on the planet. The problem with this, of course, is that now a foreign politician is dictating how the UK is run and how UK politics is run. Boris Johnson, the most likely next Prime Minister of the UK, has made it very obvious in this simple action that he will do absolutely anything that the American president wants. Now, the Conservatives in this country have pretty much done whatever the Conservatives or the Republicans in America want in general, but there has always seemed to be this veil of a line. Now that has completely gone. A foreign politician is dictating how our politics is run. And in the wake of Sir Kim's forced resignation, other US ambassadors came out and said, well, what Sir Kim said, I mean, realistically, that could have come from any of us because we've all said the same thing. And of course, nothing that Sir Kim said was untrue. You can argue to toss about the language, but the simple fact is that this was a leak. It was never meant to be out in the public. But even then, Donald Trump has said far worse about our politicians. In fact, he said far worse about Theresa May, our current Prime Minister, than anything that was said by Sir Kim. And again, what Sir Kim wrote was never meant to see the light of day. It was meant to be exclusively for the backdoor politicians, not in the papers. But it goes one step further than that, aside from us just giving everything to America, which Boris Johnson absolutely will. And again, tying into the ignorance and the arrogance of UK politicians like Charlie Elfrich, the Member of Parliament for Dover and Deal. Charlie has this unbelievably arrogant view that France is going to do absolutely everything we tell them to do because, hey, we're telling them to do it, right? Here's the issue with that. We're leaving the European Union. Now, I genuinely believe that we are going to leave with no deal, despite all the talks of Philip Hammond trying to stop that any way he can. I don't think it will. I think Boris will crush us out of the EU, which originally was not what Brexiteers were campaigning for. At least that's not what the bulk of Brexiteers were campaigning for, but hey, reality has to set in at some point. Going back to Charlie, he said over and over again that Calais will do whatever we tell them to do. We're not going to get a brunt for it, though we absolutely bloody are, because they don't want everything to go shits up. So of course they're going to work with us. Gets a little more complicated than that. And while yes, the mayor of Calais has said he does want to help the UK in any way he can, he is still opponent to the laws of France. And let's not forget that Macron has been insulted almost constantly by Boris Johnson, by Jacob Rees-Mogg, by the Conservative Party, and a whole host of Brexit politicians. As I've said, in somewhat more colourful language multiple times off camera, if you get called a punk for 3 years, you're not likely to do that person any favours because they've been calling you a punk. But now we go into the bigger problems. Because of Brexit and because Boris Johnson is going to give absolutely everything to the US man-child, we are going to drop in a number of things like food quality. Now, if our food standards drop when it comes to imports, well, that's shit for us. That's shit for you, that's shit for me, because we are now being forced to eat food that's just shit. But the same companies that produce the food in America also produce food over here. If they haven't got to keep to those high regulations, which employ people, which is a little more costly to make, well, of course they're going to drop it because it's the same corporations in the same bloody country, so why the hell would they keep it up? That leads to a bigger problem. Food quality in this country will drop, and then we won't be able to sell to the EU whether we have a deal or not. That's why America, by and large, doesn't sell its food to the EU, because the American food standards aren't at that quality. And if our food standards aren't at EU quality, well, it doesn't matter if France wants to help us. It doesn't matter if Germany wants to help us. It doesn't matter if the EU want to buy food off of us. They won't be able to, because our food simply won't be good enough. We have lost control of our country. We've lost control of our laws. We've lost control of our trading policies. We've lost control of practically everything because of Brexit. Because we allowed a few politicians who wanted to stay wealthy and not pay their fair share of tax lead us into this monstrous situation. We decided to listen to people like Nigel Farage, who are somewhat entertaining, rather than the actual experts. And again, as this all goes horribly wrong for the UK and for the average person in the street, it's not people like Nigel Farage, Boris Johnson or Jacob Rees-Mogg who will get the brunt of this. They are multi-millionaires. If they have to spend an extra grand, it really doesn't bother them at all. They won't even notice it. But for you and me and Ethel around the corner, that's who it's going to affect. And unfortunately, once we're out of the EU, there's really no going back.